Hi, this is Maria Mandarino, and I am here today with Lee Milligan, who is leads with Type 9. She's a Type 9 Wing 8, and she's going to breathe some life into the type for us today. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of her background. She's an Enneagram teacher and coach and mentor. We actually met during the training, during the Enneagram certification training with the narrative. Lee Milligan is a practicing hedge witch. She works with the tarot as well, has a morning ritual around that. She is currently taking a tri-type course, which I admit to knowing nothing about, but she's going to kind of give us a quick insight into that. And she is the founder of the Enneagram Typecast, and she teaches Enneagram basics with Karen Burley. And today we're gonna chat mostly about her Type 9, but we're probably going to go down some other esoteric roads as well. So a couple of other things about Lee. She's newly married. Congratulations, by the way. Her husband Nicholas is a Type 5 with a 4 wing. And he teaches history, Irish history. They are planning on moving to Ireland within the year. So I hope you'll talk more about that. So I think that pretty much gives us a quick, and Lee, please fill in anything that I missed.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I'm Lee. Yeah, like you said, we met back in the narrative schooling days when we were both getting certified. I am based in Portland, Oregon for the moment, but we are planning on moving to Cork, Ireland later this year,
Nice.
possibly summertime.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So when we first met, you had identified as a Type 1. And in the years that have transpired, you've landed on Type 9. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I like to normalize mistyping as much as possible because it's really common and there's a lot of shame there too, especially as a 9, maybe not knowing yourself as well as you think you do. So I actually started at 4, which is very common for a lot of 9s that I've met. And then I got really into subtypes because what's better than a type than being a counter type? So I really tried to make sexual 1 work. I most commonly will test as sexual, social, social, sexual. I come up really close on a lot of those. I do self-identify as a social sexual. But yeah, I really tried to make 1 work for me. And I can now see a little bit of my perfectionistic qualities sometimes, but also, yeah, just learning the system more, living it with it a couple years, talking with so many people of the different types and just being like, well, I love 1s. I do. I was like, I'm not 1. Yeah. It was really helpful in the narrative actually sitting on a lot of panels of, because we do these small breakout rooms and you'd be thrown in there with 3 or 4 1s and you talk about life experiences. Now I know I might have been muddying the waters. But it did sometimes feel like I was like, oh yeah, I don't really identify with a lot.
Yeah.
I was sitting with not my type. So
right. So on the channel, we've not yet talked about subtypes. So do you want to kind of give us some insights into the self-pres, social, and sexual?
Yeah. So I have not just Karen and I never get around to those on our podcast one as well either. So hoping to delve into this more, but basically real high level, know your type first, always land your type securely. But when we start to add on to the Enneagram system, we study instinctual variants or instinctual stackings. And so we all have all 3, self-pres, social, sexual, and then how we stack them is kind of, it's described different ways, but a lot of people are like an overused function, perfectly normally used function, or supporting function, and then your blind spot or area that needs some more light and work in that zone. So I am self-pres last. So that's a struggle and work for me. Also as a 9, historically, I've outsourced a lot of my self-pres, and I know that now as well. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Can you speak briefly to the tri-types? Because that's something that's not my world. And And it's interesting, the layers of how we can go
Yes.
deeper.
It's not in my world either. It is now because I'm never stop learning. So after I've completed the narrative training where tri-types are not discussed, I fell into Catherine Faver.
Mhm.
She developed the tri-type theory back in the 90s and has been ever evolving it. There are free tests online if you want to go to her website and take them and classes. But I'm currently in an 8-month class with her where we go over every single tri-type and real high level. You're still a 9, I'm still a 9, right? But then I have a mental center and then a heart-centered number that combines to create. So I'm a 9-4-6.
Mm.
And so that means like in my heart and feeling area, I take on more of the attributes and the fears and all the defense mechanisms, everything of the 4, and the same with the mental center and the 6.
Okay. So 4 is romantic and the 6 loyal skeptic, because we haven't gotten there yet. So so just so people, have a reference point there.
And there are
So
names for the tri-types as well. So
oh
then
wow.
yeah, the 9-4-6 I believe is called the seeker. So it has its own little paragraph chunk.
Interesting.
You want to read that?
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So tell me what it's like to live as a type 9.
As the heavy sigh. It depends on the day. I like to say that nines in motion tend to stay in motion, and nines at rest will stay at rest if we can. But with a lot of the peacekeeper and the mediator language, that didn't land with me so much right away because I feel I am a anxious person. And I'm an opinionated person sometimes. And those they didn't seem to fit in the 9 land. You had to be easygoing all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And not really put up too much of a fuss or have strong opinions. And what that looks like versus what that is a lived experience, it is very different. So I like to describe 9s as like the little duck on the pond, and we look all placid and nice and just floating along, but underneath there's this fury, and there's a lot of anger with 9 too.
Yeah.
9s are some of the angriest types too. So what that looks like is maybe not saying anything, but inside it can look very or feel very different.
Yeah. Yeah. So when the anger does emerge for you, what does it look like?
There's a lot of, 9s are withdrawing types. So definitely maybe isolating to process emotions, good or bad. 9s just need some more time. We're also spending so much energy regulating our own peace, like keeping our internal peace going, while also shielding or bracing against reality and keeping this piece happening with everybody else. So that's where I feel all the energy goes. It's inward and outward just to keep net neutral.
Wow.
So when the anger comes up, it kind of blows you out of your routine. But I've asked my partner, who's a 5, I was like, how often do you find yourself angry? And he's like, I think I was angry last month. Or he had to think of a time he was angry. And I was like, I get angry about something every day. Like every day. And it can take me a really long time to calm down.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild for the peacemaker.
But it can be something really silly.
Yeah.
I just have a harder time letting go. And that's a lot of the work with the Enneagram too. Just noticing these behaviors coming back. Can we get to a safe space? Can we not be as reactive? Can we that kind of growth work.
So what kind of things press the buttons?
So this will be a little bit of my 8 wing coming in, but I get really angry when people are not treated justly or fairly. And that can be inside my corporation or my day job that I work at. That could be inside family dynamics. I'm really like, I have a hard time speaking up for myself sometimes, but it's so easy for me to speak up for other people.
Okay. So I want you to fill in the 8 for us because we're actually covering 8 in the next video after this one. So
yeah, if you know someone who's pretty good with boundary work, they might be an 8. So 8 the 9-8 line is one of those in the Enneagram that doesn't make any sense when you think about it, because you've got a Mack truck like pushing up against a little marshmallow. So it's where the 1 wing is more perfectionistic and you take on a little bit of flavor of the 1, maybe you're a little more organized. The
Yeah.
8 can flare up as like a need for autonomy, I think comes in there a lot more, and
Mhm.
maybe the ability to speak one's mind more freely,
Right, right.
let those
Yeah,
opinions out.
right. Yeah.
It's also a little bit easier to say no, where
Hmm.
sometimes 9s find it really hard to say
Yeah,
no. It's just
yeah,
easier to say yes,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. And they'll protect the underdog, and that's that justice thing that you described.
Yeah, and even
Yeah,
my own boundary work has been, I think,
yeah.
easier with my 8
Nice,
wing because
nice.
I will actually be like, actually, that's not okay. And
Yeah,
I could fall into being like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was. I mean, for many years of my life, I
yeah.
was just a yes person. But
Right. Because that's what nines do well. It's that nines don't like confrontation, right? So how do you do confrontation? What happens?
I've really embraced the confrontation piece a
Uh-huh.
lot more, I would say in my later 30s, early 40s,
Uh-huh.
uh, than I did when I was younger.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't that I needed to be liked like other types did, or I
Uh-huh.
needed necessarily to all the time get along with everybody. And very much a lot of my life, I wanted to stand out and be different
Yeah.
and maybe have a subversive, or I had opinions that didn't line up with my family of origin, how I was
Uh-huh.
raised.
Yeah.
But I would never like talk about them
Mm.
that
Why?
much.
Why?
Well, it would cause conflict,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And are you trying to be special? Are you seeking attention? That's bad.
Yeah.
Could you
Yeah.
just be quiet and be a good girl over here? I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
make grades, I did all the things.
Yeah.
And very much my first marriage, a lot of 9s will fall asleep or merge with their
Right.
partners.
Right.
And I very much did that and very
Yeah.
much woke up years later and was like, how did I get here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's just something I talk with a
Yeah.
lot of 9s about, where
Yeah.
it's just like, well, my story, I mean, my partner or ex are still friends, and
Uh-huh.
that's another 9 thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Totally.
I
Yeah.
can, I want everybody to be happy, have a good life. Maybe that's not with me.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, when we first started dating, I had blue hair, I
Uh-huh.
was this little goth girl. Um, and then very much the time I went through college and we got married in my mid-20s, I ended up living in the suburbs, wearing khakis and golfing on the weekends and going to Costco, which was fine. I mean, that's another
Yeah.
9 word.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's fine, but was it me? No.
Right.
And it
Right.
felt so like a punch in the gut when I was finally like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And I could have kept
So
doing it for years.
yeah, and that's what I want to ask you about actually. So most nines would have kept doing it for years. Um, I shouldn't say most, but probably a good number of them, right? What was different for you? What made you, when you said, "How did I get here?" How did the next thing happen?
So in that relationship, we we language. Uh my partner suffered from some addiction issues.
Okay.
So we went through that together. We both got into our own therapy, and then we did
Mm-hmm.
couples therapy
Wow.
together as well. So
Mm-hmm.
we did that for the better part of a year,
Wow.
because that was another thing with me. I was like, yeah, we're having some relationship problems. I've got my own set of things. You've got
Mm-hmm.
yours. I want to work on it together. I want to fix it. I want to make this
Right.
work, or do everything I can possibly do in my power
Yeah.
to make it work.
Yeah.
And then the eventual, what if, and that's a lot of therapists and coaches' jobs, is just to ask you questions like, well, what if it didn't?
Mm.
Or would
Mm.
this be happier? Or would you be happier if life was like this? Or,
Mm.
why are you afraid of being alone? Like, shouldn't you
Mm.
like yourself and want to
Mm.
get to know yourself more? And,
Right.
so I went through all of that. So that really helped me wake
Mm.
up. And
Yeah.
then unfortunately, I didn't find the Enneagram till after my divorce, but would have
Right.
been so helpful in this journey.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
100%.
It's like you
So
could
my
take the
therapist,
expressway.
oh, and the language I could have used, and the,
Yeah.
the motivations and why
Mhm.
would have been so helpful.
And the self-compassion, I think, to
Yeah.
just
And
be gentle with yourself.
with yourself and others. I had
Yeah.
so much compassion for my partner and what he was
Yeah.
going through. And
Hmm. Yeah. And it's in a healthy way, because I know nines in that desire to merge, it can not be a healthy way to be compassionate towards someone. You can kind of lose yourself in that, right? But the Enneagram gives you that. It gives you your own space, so you don't get absorbed in somebody else's journey. So yeah, I get that. I mean, you just look back on years and decades and it's like, oh man, I could have cut through that so much faster and kinder to myself. And yeah, so it's we get it when we're supposed to though, right?
Yeah.
So
It feels really good now. And,
yeah,
who knows if the
yeah,
journey wasn't as hard, if it wouldn't feel
right.
as rewarding.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. Um, does knowing your type make anything harder?
Yes, I think when you learn about your type in general, right, there's a lot of stereotypes that
Mm,
you can check off yes or no's. But you can also use your type as an excuse a
mm,
little bit. Much in the way
mhm,
a casual like person would be like, oh well, I can't do that because I'm a Gemini. Or,
right.
you can
Right.
also do that with your type being,
Yeah.
and I sense it coming up, and a lot of it is
Yeah.
true, and it's
Yeah.
dealing with those ugly things of like, am I just stuck in this a lot of times sleepy nine fog?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it seems so much easier for other people sometimes. Um, Man, it would be nice to go to 3 right now. I need to get a lot done.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
just will that into being, please?
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. But I
Interesting.
find that the type that you are is always an interesting hinge
Yeah.
between your line movements.
Yeah.
So even when I thought I was a 1, I thought there was such a beauty in that because you're this hinge between 4 and 7, which in my mind
Mm.
was the highest high and the lowest low.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so same with 9. I'm like, how am I a little hinge? And I'm like, the most productive and then maybe the most fearful.
Right.
1 is a great place to go in growth or,
Yeah.
relaxation. And the other one is like
Hmm.
a great place to go when you're struggling
Yeah.
because it does wake me up to the things that need to be done.
Yeah.
And maybe there are things I should be afraid of that I'm not
Right.
considering. I'm just coasting along and
Yeah.
not paying attention. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, some of these you've answered already, so that's what I'm looking through. Um, so I'm going to read off some of the keywords, and I'd like you to kind of give me a check off, I guess, of do they resonate, do they not?
yeah.
Um, peaceful,
Yes.
inclusive,
Yes.
healing,
Yes. Very much.
creative,
Yes.
supportive,
Yes.
good listener,
I hope so.
patient.
Often.
Um, is the impatient part in there your 8-wing?
Possibly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
There's also I like to joke at the 9's cadence of talking because a lot of 9's can be very slow talking,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I aim to be sometimes because having
Yeah.
recorded your own voice on a podcast, you listen to yourself quite a
Right.
bit. And I meander, I make tangents that don't go anywhere, but I also
Hmm.
talk fast. I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
coast thing. I
Hmm.
don't know,
Yeah.
but
Interesting.
mhm.
Easygoing.
Yeah,
Okay. Um, uncomplicated.
definitely not.
So let's wade in that pool.
I mean, I think we're all complicated little beings.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
The Like I said, the placid facing or the
Uh-huh.
looking
Yeah.
doesn't always match what's going on
Yeah.
inside.
Do
And
you think that's true of most 9s?
I feel that when you're trying so hard to be chill or keep yourself calm or keep yourself, just going,
Yeah.
there's a lot of underlying anxiety there that can happen.
Yeah.
Um, and also 9's are emotionally, I think, very complicated because a lot of times
Mm,
we repress our emotions or we just don't bring them up to the surface. So when they do come up to the surface,
mm,
that can scare people because it's
mm.
atypical.
Right. Right.
Um, but also I think we feel so much because of that 9, we are all one sort of
Mm.
thing that goes on with 9's. We very
Yeah.
much merge with everything or feel a part of everything.
Right.
And that can be overwhelming. Like everything, you could just be
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed by how beautiful nature is. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden that starts flooding up, and then you have your own, everything that's been trapped down, you let one tear out.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can fall apart.
So there's a lot of energy that's I don't know if leaking is the right word, but you tell me.
I say leaking.
Yeah.
I actually say that as a verb when I'm crying.
Uh,
I lost my mom last year,
yeah.
and my partner was my rock. But
Mm.
a lot of times he would just be like, "Yeah, coming in for a hug," and I was like, "If you hug me right now, I'm going to start leaking, and then I don't
Uh,
want to stop, and I don't want to feel that
wow.
right now." So that's
Oh,
9.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, my experience of nines is that they're really good at being there for the person in your state, right? So, where do I want to really go with that? So, I guess how does that feel? I mean, you mentioned it's gonna make you leak, it's gonna make you cry, but when you're doing that, when you do that easily for someone else, is that hard? I guess that's one of my questions.
No, and it actually feels really good. Um,
Okay.
because there is like that 4 sensibility of being able to sit with somebody in pain,
Okay.
just witnessing it and not feeling
Okay.
like you have to do anything about it.
Okay. So that wouldn't make you cry, being
I
with that.
mean, if someone's crying and they want to have a good cry with me, I'll cry along.
Yeah. Okay. And that's
Um,
not overwhelming.
no, when I say like I'm trying to avoid my own emotions
Yeah.
sometimes, it's the
Yeah.
same thing as conflict avoidance. Like I may
Okay.
have a
Got
fight
it.
with somebody else, so I just don't want to feel this right now. Can we just put
Yeah.
this off? Or
Yeah.
can I focus on something else? But it's
Yeah.
so easy to focus on other people, almost to a fault. Like when my partner comes home, I used to find myself like taking a bath for an hour or going, I'm gonna just go finish this thing upstairs. And what it really was is I just needed to carve out a little bit more time for myself.
Oh, yeah.
Like I wasn't done being alone, because as soon as he or anyone really comes into the arena, I'm like,
Yeah.
my attention is on you. What can I get you to drink?
Uh,
How can I help you? I want to listen to you, want to hear everything about you.
okay.
And I almost can't stop that.
Yeah.
So I have
Okay.
to be alone to figure out my
Yeah.
stuff, resolve whatever I'm working on.
Right. So like
Yeah,
compartments. Like,
a little bit. But
yeah.
like just like a 5 needs their own
That's
time.
what I'm thinking of. It sounds
Everyone needs
five-ish.
their own like little
Yeah.
space in oblivion.
So the difference for the five is they need that because they're afraid there's not enough, that someone's just going to suck the last piece of juice out of them.
Yeah.
Why do you do it?
And the 9 would offer themselves up and be like, take my last juice.
Wow.
um
Wow.
I do it because everything external that happens upon me is an energy drain like a 5. And
Right.
it's not that I'm afraid I'm gonna run out of energy. Like I said, I'll work myself to death for someone, and I'll
Oh,
sit with someone in
wow.
pain, and I'll just like I'll give it my all.
Yeah.
Because that feels good. It just feels
Yeah.
good. I
Yeah.
can't express why.
Oh.
Um and I've lost where I'm going.
Okay. Well, we always circle back.
Okay.
It comes back.
But
Um,
why do I do that?
yeah. Like
The
what?
answer,
Yeah.
because we like empathetically know how much it sucks to be in pain, or we know what it's like to hurt, like
Yeah.
helping somebody like stop feeling that way or get back to net neutral. Like
That's nourishing for you.
why wouldn't you help someone who needs help?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. We certainly need more of that in this world. All right, so I'm going to give you a few more keywords.
Okay.
These are the more of the shadow. Shutting down,
Yes.
emotionally unavailable,
Yes.
numbed out,
Yes.
mm, passive aggressive,
Yep.
stubborn,
Yep.
escape.
Hmm.
Okay, so those unhealthy qualities are familiar. So I have to ask you a question because this is where I landed on my type. So ironically, I also for years thought I led with one, and then I found out I didn't, and it happened through the shadow for me. So has that been your experience of like, oh God, yeah, I do that. And it's that lower quality that you didn't even realize was a thing. Did you have any moment like that?
Yes, very much.
Yeah,
The passive aggressiveness thing
yeah,
is real.
yeah.
Um, I mean, a lot of like the core fears and desires, those were things that seemed like easy to read, but not like live.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the weaknesses of sloth, being the one that's tied with the nine,
Right.
um, I mean, it works on a couple levels. Like I remember my former partner telling me, like, I love you, but you're so lazy.
Mm,
And that being like kind of a cute thing, but
mm,
really like what's behind that is kind of
mm.
hurtful.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's not like I can get a tremendous amount of work done.
Uh-huh.
Social nines, especially, are known for being pretty much workaholics. I
Mm,
didn't know till therapy that you could actually numb out through work.
yeah, yeah.
So that was a revelation to me. I was like, oh no, I'm being really productive. Like in COVID, well, there's nothing else to do. I'll just stick around for another an hour and get this thing done. And
Mhm.
it was really
Yeah,
like just not wanting to deal with life and
right,
other things
right.
that I had
Mm-hmm.
to do.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um, one of my experiences, excuse me, my voice is starting to cut out. I mentioned before, I didn't mention on the recording yet, but I'm dealing with a respiratory issue. So if my voice goes away for a while, I may grab a cup of tea. Um, so my experience with some unhealthy nines in my life, that lower expression of going asleep to themselves when things are just too uncomfortable, too painful, um, things just don't seem predictable enough, and there could be some conflict, or there is some conflict, and that shutting down happens, that numbing out that nines do. As someone who's not a nine, I've observed that as incredibly violent behavior.
Mm.
And I said that once to a nine in the training, actually. And there was a total look of shock on his face, because I think he prided himself on being a good mediator and making everybody happy. And even if that meant sacrificing himself, that there was a greater good to all of that. So I just wonder if through your work with the Enneagram, can you see that either in yourself or in the dynamic of what nines can do, and how that withdrawing can feel violent.
I think it's really important to check in as a nine on why you're doing what you're doing. Uh,
Mm,
because it can be really soothing to not have to pick something to do, like especially if
mhm.
oh, I'm needed here, let me just do this feels
Yeah.
great. It also feels like you're doing something. Nines will also will work on checklists with nines, and if they do one thing on there, I'm like, that's a win. Like we
Wow.
don't have to get through the
Yeah.
checklist sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of nines will numb out through routine, and a
Mhm.
lot of nines can't keep a routine to save their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
So it's what you can find comfort in, but it's also just checking in with why you're doing the things that you're
Yeah.
doing.
But
Um,
as far as their perspective so when someone cares about the nine and
mhm.
they see the nine going into that inertia, into that sloth, they're just not getting off of the couch, and you care about that person, and you're watching them basically negate themselves, how would you bring that into awareness for an unhealthy nine, I guess,
Um,
of how it affects the person who
there,
cares?
there's two things that affect me when you say that about
Uh-huh.
rest, because I feel like as a culture we don't celebrate restorative rest.
Yeah.
We enjoy talking about the 10 things we did over the weekend. Nobody is ever like, I did nothing.
Nothing.
I didn't get PJs. I mean, this was cooler before COVID, but
Yeah.
I didn't leave the house. I ordered in pizza. It was the perfect
Uh-huh.
day.
Yeah.
That can feel great. And I think
Mm-hmm.
everyone needs a little bit of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's when you can't, or it doesn't seem worth it to stop
Mm-hmm.
being. Yeah.
Right. Right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Pause. Yeah. And how do you get yourself out of that little hole?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I always find that the best way to get out of my little puddle is to get out into nature. I know that's cliche. Take a walk.
No, yeah.
Like so many times in my life, a 30-minute walk has completely shifted my like where I was to where I am now.
Yeah. Yeah.
About to lose it, erupted little volcano of anger.
Mm-hmm.
Um for and then I'm like, take a walk outside and then I come back and I'm like, why was I angry?
Yeah.
Like it can change so quickly.
Yeah.
I think meditation's really good for nines. Even if you are one of those people who, like me, like I struggle with meditation, and
Mm.
I've done
Interesting.
I we did that meditation. I think it was like 45 minutes guided meditation with Helen Palmer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was like screaming mentally because I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I can barely do 5 minutes. So when somebody was like, let's jump to 45, I was like, this is too advanced for me. I can't be this chill for this long. Or I have a really hard time quieting the mind, but I'm
Okay.
working at it. Some
Yeah.
muscle, I'm getting better.
Right. Right.
But it's the same part of like meditating is great. I love it. But what I like is to just journal quickly, really after it, like a one pager.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to have a beautiful, flowery, long entry.
Right.
It could be bullet points sometimes of like
Yeah.
what came up for me
Yeah.
or what was lingering over here that you couldn't get away. Like maybe you do need to just acknowledge him or
Uh-huh.
whatever that was and then
Right.
let that go.
Right.
That's what I also do with like tarot card,
Yeah.
like card of the day. That's
Uh-huh.
something I do every single day, which is hard
Uh-huh.
for me, and it sets my intention for the day.
Okay.
And then I
Speak
sort
to
of
that a little.
pay attention for things that are coming up. So with a lot of the tarot I was doing in the beginning of my practice, I was like
Uh-huh.
focusing on like the past. So I'd be like,
Uh-huh.
why did that happen? Da, 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 da. And then
Mm.
more recently, I'd say the past couple of years, I've been doing really, really in the moment stuff. So living in the present, trying to be more present.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, so if that's, sometimes I just get certain cards that, cards stalk you.
Uh-huh.
There's a couple cards that I think of are like just me cards. I'm like, oh, it's a you day. Like that's what this means. We don't have to go too deep in the meaning.
Uh-huh. Right.
And then I'll get some where, when you draw a card and it comes up like 3 or 4 times, you're like, what are you trying to tell me? What am I not hearing?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so that's a good, almost like a meditation.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've got a quote here from the Riso Hudson book. Nines grow by recognizing that the more they seek peace of mind by turning away from conflicts and problems, the greater is the likelihood that they will bring about disturbances in their lives and relationships. True, false, how strong does it resonate?
I think you gotta have the tough talks. And it also is never as bad as you think it's gonna be.
Yeah, wow.
Sometimes it might be, but most of the time you're like, wow, I can't believe how much fear I had about this small thing I wanted to stand up about or just bring attention to, and everybody's like, okay,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
Maybe I could ask for more. I'll be more honest next time.
Right. Such a better use of energy
Yeah.
and not letting fear of conflict drive your life. So, so on the same idea of this fear of conflict, the other phrase I have written down here is I have this personal fascination of what each type fears more than death.
Mhm.
So that idea of nines fearing conflict or confrontation more than death. I mean, is it as significant? Like, is it that big for you?
Especially when I was younger, if I was in the presence of a fight or something, I would I
Yeah.
would physically lean out. Like if
Oh.
anybody was like being aggressive or
Mhm.
just really like telling it like it is or something, I'd be like, oof, like why are you coming
Mm.
in hot? You coming in hot. Um but also, having those a little mini eruptions that nines do, where it all comes up at once and we don't make any sense when we lose it on you, possibly, or we try to have a coherent thought line, but it's all flooded with emotions and everything comes up quickly, and then we want to shut it down as quick as possible and then apologize about it for 3 days.
I was going to ask you that. Okay.
So sorry.
So it doesn't feel good after you finally let it come out.
Right. But that's why the doing things in real time, not letting things build up, just having the little things like, hey,
yeah, then the eruption doesn't have to happen.
The thing that caused the eruption, it's not like there weren't 37 things before that are real problems. So yeah.
Okay. In the shadow, well, let me ask the second question first. What is your temper like? And by that I mean, does it have degrees? Does it, I mean, and what determines the degrees?
I think there's definitely degrees of anger with the 9. I think we experience all of them. It might have better language for them than some other head or heart types, especially with 1,000 words for anger. There's mild irritation, and then there's just like strong outrage or disgust at something. How that shows up, though, probably is more based on the health level of the day.
Right.
Yeah, and how you're processing everything else.
Okay. From day to day, are you aware of what's in what I call your well of anger? Like, do you know, like, are you aware of it?
I'd say maybe 2/3, but there's an elusive 1/3 that when I become aware of it, I'm like, oh, not only am I mad about this, I have been mad about this for a while. I just didn't realize it. But yeah, that's a little bit of that 9. The sloth is also like falling asleep to yourself and like and numbing out to things you just don't want to deal with or process with. So we can slap a "it's fine" label on everything. It's like our favorite word, or it's no problem, or all that kind of stuff. But,
okay.
Yeah.
As a type 9, what is it that you need?
The older I get, I've become aware that I just need to do things at my own pace and honoring my own pace. So, because, I can get things done rather quickly. I do a creative job. I'm in graphics, graphic design. So I can produce a ton amount of work for people very quickly, hand it to them, and I don't need the praise, right? It's like, I can do all of this for you, and please don't praise me. Please don't call me out. I don't want the attention. It's really uncomfortable.
Why?
It just feels icky. It's it's like leaving a casserole on someone's front porch and walking away. There's that satisfaction of being like, this is for you. I put all my love into it. Please, no thanks. Also, don't wash it before you give it back. Just give it back to me. I'll get all the like, it's not a big deal.
I can totally see a 9 doing that.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I wish everything would go. But the older I get, I'm like, do things in the time that feels right to you. Rest when you need rest. Work really hard. Life is about balance. We can't go the whole time. We also can't be at rest the whole time and be active in our own lives.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just go through my notes here a little bit. So when we set the interview up, I had talked about my vision with the Enneagram, which I've not talked about much on the channel, but the Enneagram's not the only thing I do. But it is an important layer to help people gain insight into patterns that repeat that cause them pain, basically cause them to suffer. But like I said, it's not the only thing that I do. And I had mentioned this to you when we talked earlier. And I mentioned the tarot and archetypal patterns that exist in the tarot, and astrology and archetypal patterns in astrology. And I loved your response. You're like, you're talking my love language. So to me, those anything that's an archetypal pattern system, a wisdom system, to me, it's a divine conversation. And if you can find the pattern in it, there's truth in it, and there's divine truth in it. And I think that's the language, the only language really that the divine can enter into communication with us. So we've been chatting back and forth over the past couple of days about the astrology as it relates to the Enneagram. And I know that you're starting to kind of explore and learn astrology on your own. And I assume are you in a course?
I'm working with a teacher in Astoria, Oregon. She actually did tarot at our wedding.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was fun. So she had some like old courses that she had available. She's like, hey, do these, and
Nice.
we'll talk a couple times. So
Okay.
I'm doing that with her.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm also
Okay.
taking like a local tarot shop in Portland has like some meetups every once in a while. Trying to get it
Nice. So you have
there.
community. That's nice.
Yeah.
All right. So I am currently in a training program for Hellenistic astrology. I'm trying to just get my screen situated here so I can share it. And I don't do charts yet. Bear with me. But I have a fascination with using the chart to see where the overlap is in the Enneagram. Because to me, there are a few soul decisions. So not intellectual decisions, but soul decisions that happen that are reflected in the chart that are a little different than what might unfold in somebody's Enneagram. And to me, the chart can somehow fill those gaps in, those questions, or vice versa. So I'm going to try to screen share here. Bear with me. Okay. And there we have Lee's chart. You can see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I don't know if I can, no, I can't make it bigger than that. So we have your sun is in Aquarius, your moon is in Virgo, and your rising sign is in Pisces. So I just kind of want to give people a quick, because we've not talked here at all about astrology yet. So your sun sign is who you come in to be. Your moon sign is kind of like your inner aspect of your personality. Usually don't show that to others too easily until we get to really feel comfortable with them. Sometimes it'll slip out, but it's more hidden. And a rising sign is pretty much the face that we show to the world. So Pisces, of all the signs, probably has some boundary issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like to, just throw like a broad label on something, but Pisces is water and fluid, and
yeah.
So and nines are kind of they can be that way. So they're, I say they're watery, like Pisces. And then we have the Virgo moon, which is more earth, more grounded, more invested in health, nature, more of those types of things. And then we have your Aquarius sun, which fascinates me as a type 9. So Aquarius is the humanitarian. When you spoke to that social subtype and the 8 wing and social justice and looking out for people, and to me that just screams your Aquarius sun.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that can make your 9 look a little different,
Mm-hmm.
which your 9 does look a little different. Like I wouldn't initially think that you led with 9, until you have those deeper conversations. But your Aquarius, your Pisces rather, sure does kind of say, yeah, of course she's a 9, right? And that's your rising sign. That's what you present easiest to the world. So what do you think?
I think for sure the Pisces feels nine-ish, and
Yeah.
the fluidity and the, kind of wanting to be ruled. Like if the tides are ruled by the moon, we want somebody to kind of take the reins on our lives
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
That
Well
feels
said.
that feels true.
Yeah.
I run into a lot of similarities with Aquarius and my partner, the 5.
Uh-huh.
Because we can talk about, he's a huge history buff, so we'll talk about,
Yeah.
this fascist thing that happened in Spain, and then we'll go over to here, and then we'll talk about, in the 60s this was happening, and it's all about like subcultures and maybe some of the esoteric, and just mentally bouncing off each other, but also
Yeah.
a little that rebellious spirit.
Yeah. That Uranian kind of energy of well, you're innovative for sure.
Change.
Where is yeah.
Yeah.
So and I had mentioned this to you we were messaging your 9th house, which is the house of God, religion, and spirituality.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, I love the 9th house. um it's ruled by Scorpio, and you've got Uranus in there. So Scorpio's water.
Okay.
And you've got the planet of innovation, shock, change. I mean, not just change, but shocking change. We're not going to do this in a way that everybody's going to go, oh yeah, okay. It's going to be, oh, whoa. You've got that in your house of spirituality, God, and religion.
Big energy there, right?
What?
That's pretty big energy.
I think it's pretty awesome, huge energy. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you're a change bringer. Scorpio is also transformation, right? So transformation, change, spirituality, spiritual connection. Where does that slip into your 9?
So pretty much through the entire pandemic, I've been working on Enneagram, typology, uh, anything spiritual. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't get enough. I didn't have to relate to everything, but I'd try it out, right? See if
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
hit.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I keep working with people and doing this work, I'm just more motivated to keep doing it. And sort of
Yeah.
my old life and what I used to, think I was going to do forever,
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of questioning all that now,
Mm.
because I get so much more personal fulfillment out of working with people and doing spirituality,
Yeah.
and just, if I make one person's day a little bit better, isn't that so much more rewarding than X, Y, or Z, whatever I was doing
Yeah.
before. To me,
Yeah.
that feels really
Yeah.
true, and also like this urgency to it. That's like,
Yeah.
what are you waiting for? Like,
Yeah. That urgency is Uranus. Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And when I
but you,
tamp it down, it feels icky. So that's a lot of that 9 stuff. Is like I'm
yeah.
ignoring something. It keeps coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that 8 wants to just get in and drive the bus.
Yeah, let's just do
And
it.
yeah. Yeah.
See the intensity. Let's go.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. And that's Uranus. That's the intensity. And Scorpio. And oh man, that's just such a great place to have that going on. And then I want to look at your 10th, because that's the house of career, and which is in Sagittarius, but you have Neptune in there, which is, I think, a beautiful contrast to that Uranus in the 9th. So as we see your relationship to spirituality growing into the 10th house of career, Neptune is, the higher manifestation of Neptune is the Christ consciousness. Right. So, I mean, 9s, we think of 9s that way, first of all, right? The highest level of 9 is pretty much, at that, the lowest level of it is they can also hang themselves on the cross. But yeah, the highest is that Christ consciousness. And it's in your house of career.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what do you think there as far as how that superimposes on your Enneagram?
I mean, that could also play back to that just not being personally fulfilled by even something I'm really good at. Like I'm really good at my day job. I could do it for the rest of my life. Like my last relationship on paper was great. I could have done it the rest of my life. People are like, "Why are you leaving such a good marriage?" And I'm like,
Uh,
there can be something better.
right.
And it's not in that kind of like shiny object 7 way where I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
what's over there?
Right.
Even, I'm enrolled in so many classes right now and I've bought so many books in the past 6 months and I'm just like, I'm forgiving myself. I'm just like, you're
Yeah.
in this phase of like, it's sort of like a second adolescence. Like I don't know why we ever stop learning
Yeah.
through life. I don't know why anyone likes to just settle into routine and keep living the same way. I'm like, I want to learn more and I want to pursue my passions and I want to do meaningful work that
Mm,
has impact, you know.
yeah. So why do nines want that?
I feel like a lot of times nines, and this is something that will also breed anger, is we don't feel seen. Um,
Okay.
it's for a couple of reasons. A, we don't put ourselves out there that strongly. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, we're great at keeping track of who's talking and whose turn it is and who hasn't talked, and making
Hmm.
sure sometimes the quieter voices in the room get heard.
Mm,
And sometimes we are the quieter voices in the
right.
room, or we need more time to process stuff, and then we'll come back to you later. But if no one follows up with you, it's your job to go
Right.
follow up with them.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and there's a real thing about being ignored. Because
Mm,
that used to happen to me quite a bit where it's like, oh, I'd met, it's like, oh, it's so nice to meet you. And I'm like, actually, we met before. And then just having that
yeah.
chronically happen, you're like, am I
Wow.
forgettable? Am
Wow.
I, because I don't think I have like a demure,
Mm,
persona, but
yeah.
that's something that's always on the edge of my mind.
So when that happens, is it hurtful? Does it make you angry? Does it confuse you? Like, what does it do?
It's just really confusing feeling because like I said, I don't want the spotlight. But
Yeah.
every once in a while, maybe one in every 30 times I want the spotlight or I want the
Right.
praise. Or if
Yeah.
he's doing the same things for people all the time and they
Yeah.
used to thank you for them and now they've just become standard and
Uh-huh.
taken for granted,
Yeah.
that can build real animosity, even though you might look happy to be doing it. You're
Right.
like,
Right.
you should thank me for this, or you should acknowledge,
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So anything else in your chart that jumps out as far as enriching your understanding of your type 9?
I was always confused by empty houses and what that means for your
Yeah.
personal work. Does that mean there's not much to do in those houses for you? Or I mean, that's more of you. I just don't know how to read charts.
I don't know that I can give you the best answer for that, but part of what I would say is transits come into that. So I don't have your transits up here. I just have your natal chart. Um, which is one of the phrases they use for this is the natal promise. So this is basically what you get to come in and work with, which is basically your Enneagram type. Same kind of thing. This is what we've got. But then the transits change the face of all of that, and then it creates aspects. So I think the aspects are what can light up. And again, I'm just riffing here, so I'm not sure this is the correct answer, but I think aspects as on the outer part of the ring, you would see where the planets are currently moving through your houses. And then, there would be lines from house to house that bring a different kind of breath into the chart, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that because the house is empty means that there's nothing going on there. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's not true.
Okay.
But
I'll be interested to look into that more. But yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
one thing that confused me was finding out about my Virgo moon.
yeah.
Um, and then someone explained to me is like, you might need to check things off a list and da da da.
Yeah.
But even what came up for me when I was talking about wanting to shut my emotions down because I
Hmm.
didn't really have time for those right now, or I don't want to feel those right now.
Yeah, yeah,
That feels very a little bit
yeah,
maybe Virgo.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah.
And Virgos are, so it's Earth, right? To me, nines can be very watery, but they can also be very earthy and nourishing. And just, I mean, if you're having a bad day and a nine sees it, there's little more that you could ask for, is to be acknowledged, seen, nurtured by a 9. And I think that's very Virgo-ish. So yeah, and I think your connection to nature is in there too. Most 9s that I know do know that they need to get into nature.
Yeah.
They have a unique relationship with the natural world, and Virgos definitely do.
And alone.
Yeah.
So much alone time I think is needed for 9s. And I was hiking in Killarney, the National State Park in Ireland, there, and I was working over there at the same time. So I'd work all day, and it was summertime, so the sun's up till 11 at night. And so I'd hike for 3 hours around the park, and I felt like I had the fullest day because I was of use. And then I got to be alone and process everything in this beautiful setting, and it was just one of the most amazing times.
Nice. Yeah. All right, I'm going to stop the screen share and bring you back, and let me just go over, make sure that I've covered everything that I had hoped to. Do you have any questions or anything that I didn't cover that you think is important for people to know about leading with 9? And
I think a lot of 9s and attachment types, 3, 6s, mainly 6s and 9s are going to have, those are the people I get the most in typing interviews, because they need that mirror back to them sometimes to see how they're showing up, because they may feel like they're showing up a certain way, but other people observing them might be like, actually, I'm seeing this, and that can be hugely helpful. So yeah, if you're going around the wheel, I mean, I always suggest everybody to learn all the types, because eventually you're going to need to know those. And because the Enneagram is so dynamic, you will visit probably one of those numbers, if not multiple.
Yeah. What about the importance for you for working with a trained Enneagram professional? How important do you think that is?
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I want everyone to have access to all of these things, but I do, working with a coach costs money, working with a therapist costs money. If you can only have one, I love working one-on-one with clients. I'm trying to get group things. I've been a part of some great groups as well. I mean, that could be my social subtype, but I love being around other people. I also just like hearing what's going on in other people's lives and how can I be of help, and maybe I've lived through a certain thing I can relate to somebody with. So finding community, finding an Enneagram practitioner that you want to work with is great. I actually got my own therapist to learn the Enneagram.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it was through pressure or just I wouldn't shut up about it. So she was like, I'm going to look more into this. She's like, actually, my company's doing a training. I'm like, yay. I was like, I know people who facilitate things like that. So
that was nice work on your 8-wing there. Good leadership.
It would just save a lot of time if you could just read these 8 books. Thank you.
All righty. One of the things that I talk about with if people are able to work with someone, because I self-typed on my own and completely, and there are benefits to learning the wrong type. I mean, you mentioned that. But that moment of facing myself, and it was when my spiritual director, who was just starting to work with the Enneagram, and she just basically held up the mirror with this one little thing that I did. And I could have read all the books behind me and in the library too, and I would have never gotten to what that woman did for me in a moment. So I do like to point that out. Reading the books, taking the tests, all of it is helpful. It's definitely helpful. And even if you spend a few years in the wrong type, if nothing else, it teaches you compassion for that type. Yeah.
But I also had to be professionally typed. So I had never even considered 9. And there's a lot of people who come into a type, especially like 6 happens a lot, where people are like, well, I don't even see that. So that's not me. It's every other number but that one. And I feel like that with 9, and especially not knowing, I knew no 8s. I knew like a couple of 8s in my life. I was like in an 8 free land. And so I had nothing to base 8 off of. And 8 can be one of those types that's just described too compartmental, like too
Yeah.
truncated sort of.
Yeah.
2 comes in there like that too a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So knowing more 8s, living,
Yeah.
seeing the varied amount that 9 shows up as. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people are 9s. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's
yeah,
the most
it's,
common type on the planet, right? Isn't that what?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which is, I'm always like, thank God.
But also a type that's hugely drawn to the Enneagram
Yeah.
and lots of typology as well, because
Yeah.
we're desperately trying to figure out who we are, what we want, and what are we
Right.
doing.
And how do we connect, and how do we,
Yeah.
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 How do we make, everyone happy? Yeah, in a functional way. So, all righty. So Lee, tell us where people can find you, and I'll be putting all this in the show notes too, but share that with us.
Yeah, if you want to find me, I'm Lee Milligan. I'm at leemilligan.co, not com.
Mhm.
I'm also at Ritual Enneagram. That's my business. And I do teaching, coaching, mentoring with the Enneagram or without. I still offer typing interviews if anyone wants to do
Nice.
one. And then yeah, I said my podcast season 1 is out, Enneagram Typecast. Season 1's with Karen Burley. It's a
Uh-huh.
lot of Enneagram fundamentals. So we cover a lot in
Very
there. And
cool.
then the very last part of that season, we do panels, so mini panels.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, so we have 2
Okay.
people on of each type. So if you want to hear
Okay.
some people talking about their lived experiences, I think that was
Yeah.
also a great benefit. I don't
Mhm.
imagine that's why you chose the narrative as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hear
you've
people
got to
tell,
see it come alive. Yeah.
yeah, their stories come alive.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just
Yeah.
different than reading about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just so, I mean, you go from laughter to tears, and I mean, it's awesome to see that unfold in people. So, and to hold it with them. So, Lee, thank you very much for taking the time to do this today. I so appreciate it. It's wonderful to see you after a few years. So,
Yeah, this is a pleasure.
yeah, and good luck to you with the move to Ireland and your new marriage. So,
Thank you so much.
all right, thank you, Lee.
All right.
Bye bye, everyone.